Hi, this is Cathy Goodwin, and today we are going to talk about 3 ways a coach, or indeed any service professional, can identify a profitable market. In other words, what are some ways you can get started on honing in on your niche, or niche? I say niche. So first you want to think about your target market, but we're going to talk about how to refine that into a niche. And that includes who you can help. So let's say you are a relationship coach. Who do you work with? Well, you might decide that you are working with divorced women. You might decide that you are working with single people who are never married and maybe they're getting a little desperate. You might decide that you're working with couples who want to get closer together. Who are the people that you help? And what's important is you want to identify your niche in terms of not just who they are, but what problems, and again, some people don't like the word problem, so we can say what challenges do you help them with. So let's say let's get back to the divorced women who are looking for mates. Maybe they haven't dated in a long time and it's really scary to get out there and meet somebody, and where do you start? Do you go on Match.com? What do you wear? Well, you can work with these women on any number of challenges, but you decide which challenges you want to work with. Where will you fit when they think about how to solve the whole dating issue? You're probably, if you're listening to this, not a therapist, you're not a psychologist, but if you are, then of course you have a very specific kind of very specific way of helping them. If you are a fashion consultant, you might want to work with people who are starting to date again. That would be a very interesting and very exciting target market to have. It might not be your only market, but it certainly would be one to go after. So think about what challenges you will help them solve. And finally, why are you the best resource to help them conquer these challenges? If you're working, again, with divorced women, maybe you've been divorced, maybe you've worked with other divorced women and you know this market really, really well. You don't actually have to have walked in their shoes. I know there are people who say you're supposed to talk about how you had this problem and you solved it and you're now brilliant and you're qualified. But I'm not sure I believe that. I think there's a difference between a coach and a player. There are some people who are really great players, but who can't coach their way out of a paper bag. If you follow sports, we see this all the time in the sports world, where people are great players, literally, and they're really pretty awful coaches. So you want to think about what makes you qualified to work with this market. It might be your experience, or it might be the way you're applying your experience to their challenges, even though you've never had those challenges yourself. So what are some of the ways we go about creating or identifying a niche? The first method, this is the one I recommend starting with, is the interview method. What you do, just like it sounds, you go out and talk to at least 6 people who are in your target market, or who you would like to have in your target market, or who should be in your target market if they only knew it. What you want to do is meet with them personally or talk on the phone. Either way, the key is not to use email. And the key is to ask open-ended questions about the issue. So if you're working with divorced women, let's stay with that example, you would say something about, when you go out on a date, let's walk through the stages you go through when you've got a date lined up and you're ready to go out and meet that date. What steps do you take? What goes through your mind as you imagine yourself going out there, getting ready for the date, agreeing to go on the date in the first place, being on the date and where to meet, and see what questions come up at each stage. That would just one technique. There are many more. And it's very important not to ask why. Like, why are you nervous about going out on this date? The reason is that when you ask people why, their brains shift gears, and they're not talking about how they feel or what they experience. They're now in more of a defensive or explanatory mode. So they're analyzing. They're not responding with something you can use in your marketing. It's also important to avoid having someone say, well, what I would advise other people to do, because then they're in that mode or of really interpreting and being almost critical. I've had people, when I've done interviews, when they try to go into the mode of, well, here's what I think you should do. Here's how I think you can help people. And when someone does that, that's totally off track. That is not going to help you at all. They've got to talk about their own experience through their own eyes and non-analytically. And it's very important that you not do a sales pitch. Sometimes when you work with people in research mode, they will turn around and say, hey, I want to work with you. I like the way this is going. That's fine. That's happened to me. It's happened to a lot of people. It's important to also identify whether, if they, we're going to buy, would they buy from someone like you? For instance, if you're working again with the divorced women, let's stay with that example. If they said, well, I would only work with a licensed coach, a licensed therapist, and you don't fit that model, then that tells you a lot about someone in this market. That maybe if you don't have the credential they want, or you don't have the quality they want, or if they say, I want to work with someone who's been through this, someone who's been divorced before, and you're not divorced, then you may decide that first, this may be an outlier. This may not be a typical person in your market. But if you get this over and over again, then you may have to think about, well, maybe it's time to shift to a different market. Method number 2 is the teleseminar webinar that you arrange, you hold. It's live. That's the most important part. Teleseminars and webinars can be blurred because I use teleseminars with slides and people always think it's a webinar. So I've started calling it a webinar if that's what the way other people describe it. Again, it's the way your market uses the term, not the way you use the term. So I call them webinars. And what that does is it gives you a chance to test the topic, to see, are there people really interested in what you're doing? And it gives you a chance to do this with more than one at a time instead of the one-to-one interviews. It allows you to respond to questions before the call. What I used to do when I had my teleseminar series for a long time, I would have people fill out a form and they would put in, of course, their first name and email. And then I had a required section to say, what is your number one question about this topic? And I would maybe modify that question to fit the topic. If people did not answer that, if that drove them away and they said, oh, if I have to answer this question, I won't come on the call, then you have to ask how serious they are. But this was very helpful in identifying issues that people had. And of course, it helped me structure the call to meet their questions. And during the call, this will help you tell if people are interested. If they ask a lot of questions while you're talking, it means they're really concerned, they've got ideas, and they're really involved and engaged. If they have no questions, they might be interested in taking notes, but they may be multitasking. They may be on the call because it was a convenient time of day. They're just curious. Maybe they're even your competitor and they're shopping the competition. But the key is, questions are a good way to assess what's going on with your market. And I want to caution you that free calls, which of course these would be, can be misleading. Once you ask people to pay even $5, and if they're willing to pay even a small amount, that tells you they are really interested in what you've got to say. A lot of times we have topics that we're interested in, but not enough to pay for them. A good example is astrology. I mean, I'll sometimes enjoy listening to someone talk about astrology or tarot or something like that, but I don't pay for that. And that kind of is a way of my values, and some people feel differently. They're the opposite. They would always want to pay. So the key is, if people are listening to something because it's free, that's a start. It's the first step in identifying whether there's interest and what kind of people you're getting. But once you start charging, you may find that you're getting a different type of audience and different type of response. Finally, method 3 is what I call the evolutionary method. In other words, you let your niche evolve. So you offer coaching. Maybe if you're just getting started or you're entering a new market, you start with a low-cost offer to a small or limited audience. Sometimes that will actually backfire because people want to pay more and they wonder what's wrong if you're only charging this small amount. Sometimes you'll get people who are willing to pay a small amount, but it's not going to tell you what people will pay or who will come when you start offering the market rate. So, but one of the ideas is to get clients, get someone to get started with coaching or offering your service, and then notice who responds. For example, if you put out a shingle and say, I'm available as a relationship coach and I like to work with divorced women, but you start getting calls from people who are never married, and you may say, well, maybe this is a market I haven't tapped into. Or one thing to remember is, just because you're surprised, just because they're responding to in one way, when in fact you are offering a different kind of service, that doesn't mean you change your marketing and you proactively target that niche. What that means is you're just aware that you're attracting that audience. Sometimes you will advertise to one market and get another because the people that you're getting have upward aspirations. So if you're targeting, say, upper income professionals and you're getting entry professionals, what that means is they're identifying with upper income professionals and they want to work with someone who's used to people at that level. That's just one explanation. There's obviously all kinds of reasons people might be doing that. And of course, are you getting the demographic you expected? Very common is an experience that happens to a lot of coaches. It's happened to me when I expected to have more women than men, and I actually got more men than women coming to work with me. That doesn't mean, again, you change your whole approach, but it does mean that I'm sensitive to that, and I try not to use images that are so feminine that it would scare away a guy. And what is your reaction to working with the people who come to you? If you're getting a lot of people that you don't like working with, then that might mean you're sending out vibes that are not really working, and that needs to be worked on. Or maybe you are getting people who are you just don't enjoy them, and you thought you'd like working with this niche and you don't. Pay attention to that. If you'd like to learn more, I've taken these 3 tips from my newest ebook, Quick Start Guide to Market Yourself as a Coach. It's actually more than an ebook because I have samples and I have templates and I have some really cool bonuses attached to that. What I do is I took the idea that I'm working with a lot of people who were coaches, and they sometimes were working alone because they didn't feel they could afford a coach. Sometimes they were working with a guru where they were paying 4-figure or even 5-figure amounts to work with someone. And I found that because they were paying so much money, they were often unable to buy other things they needed. For example, if you're going to work with a guru, you need to be able to pay for a website and some clothes to go to networking meetings and things like that. And I also found that when they worked with someone, the person they were working with often didn't have the time to explain the nitty-gritty of things, like how to do the website, what a coaching agreement looks like, all things like that. So I put all that into this one ebook at a very affordable price, and I would encourage you to check it out, because the idea is this is an all-in-one guide. It takes away the fluff, it takes away the hype, and it's really just a down-to-earth. Here's how you go about marketing if you're a coach. I even include some questionnaires like, are you ready to start your business? Are you ready to start being a coach? How to evaluate your readiness. And if you're not ready, what are some steps you can take? And if you're a veteran, I think you'll pick up some tips too, because I also talk about how you work with social marketing and how you work with clients. And I have some client management tips as well that I really haven't seen anywhere else. So I'd encourage you to check out this ebook and the bonuses. I've got a bonus where I talked to a coach who made a fast start after being a Fortune 50 manager. I've got some templates of things you can use that are often available only in the 5-figure and 4-figure high-end programs. And I encourage you to go over there, check it out, and let me know what you think. Thanks so much for joining me today, and I look forward to talking with you again on a future teleseminar and perhaps a consultation.